So this is one of the strategies with credit cards that I've been using for a long time now that I wish I would have started a lot earlier in my journey. And so what ends up happening doing this is that since I'm not getting charged interest anymore, APR doesn't matter to me. And what I'm doing now is I'm able to pay a credit card off in 55 days instead of 25 days. And so what that extra 30 days is going to allow is more time to sell through inventory and get that cash flow that we need to service the credit card debt. And so the whole goal of this process is to hold on to your money for the longest amount of time possible before paying it back and not paying any interest. And so to do that, what we need to know first is that if you pay off your statement balance in full, that's going to mean no interest is going to be charged. And so that's another way of saying if you pay the amount in full by that due date, APR doesn't matter because you're never going to get charged interest. And so if you're not familiar with terms, I just want to define these before that way we get on a level playing field. What we need to know is what a billing cycle is. And all that is there's a start and an end date within the billing cycle, and it's usually defined or expressed in days. So like January 1st through January 31st, that's 31 days. That's going to make up your statement balance. And the statement balance is made up of all the charges within that billing cycle and any payments. So if you spend $10,000, pay $6,000, there's a $4,000 balance outstanding. That $4,000 balance is going to become the amount that is due on your due date. So it's usually like a month after your closing date. And so that's what we're talking in terms of definitions. And so what we need to do in terms of groundwork, this is the way I set it up the first time. I downloaded 3 statements and then I got these data points. I got the start date, the end date, and the due date. And then what we need to do is calculate the cycle, meaning like how many days within each cycle. And so what that looks like, I'm going to show you right here. I downloaded 3 statements from Capital One Business. And so these orange lines go right here, and then the due date's over here. And so then all I'm doing is I'm calculating the billing cycle by basically getting the end date minus the start date, and that's 30 days for the first line. And then the due date, and this is where I'm getting the 55-day figure from. And so what we're determining is if you spend on the first day of your billing cycle, and then you figure out the due date, that's going to tell you that if you do it that way, it's not going to be due until 55 days later. Whereas the worst setup would be spending on the last day of your cycle because it's going to be due right away, meaning in 25 days. And so what ends up happening is when you start looking at it this way, you're looking at a difference of paying between in 25 days or 55 days. Using the example that I have earlier, that means if we spent on February 25th, it's not going to be due till April 21st, and that's going to be 55 days that we have until we were required to pay back the amount. And so if you want to take this further, what I ended up doing is, since I have multiple credit cards, you can change the due date on your credit cards. And so I like to use 4 credit cards. And what I ended up doing was figuring out which ones let me change the due dates, because sometimes they don't let you. So you would basically have your strategy revolve around the one that they don't let you change. And so let's just say, for example, we would make the due dates 7 days apart. So it'll be on the 1st, the 8th, the 15th, and the 22nd. And so what ends up happening is you always want to spill over to card 2, then card 3, card 4 on the start of the billing cycle. So if you're taking like $10,000 in spend, what that's going to do, this is a theory, of course, you're going to have a $2,500 balance on each of the 4 cards. And so kind of the byproduct of this happening is if you're unable to pay the balance for whatever reason, you can isolate it to 1 card, meaning you're only going to pay $2,500 balance if you can pay off the other 3 cards. And so if you're going to take a hit, it's going to be a lot better because it's going to be just a fourth of the balance it otherwise would be. And this is going to be a problem like with Amazon sellers. If you're on the standard 2-week disbursement cycle, if you get caught off cycle, you might not have enough time to pay off the balance. And so that's kind of why the other perk of getting 55 days to pay off the balance is there. And so what ends up happening too is that even if I get charged interest, it's not necessarily a deal breaker for me, because I want to give you this example to showcase just for easy math. If we're using a 2% cashback card and it's 24% APR, basically if we divide 24% APR divided by 12 months, that ends up being 2% per month. And so the way I see it is if we buy on day 1, we got the statement closed right here, 30 days. It's not due till 25 days later, 55 days out, right? And so what ends up happening is if we don't pay in full on that balance, we're going to get charged 2% interest. But remember, we're getting 2% cash back. And so I think of it as functionally cancels out that first cycle of interest. And so you're going to get another statement cycle. And if you can pay it off by then, it's kind of the equivalent of getting 80 days of float, because that 2% cash back canceled out your first cycle. And so it's almost like you're not going to see a real charge until like day 105. And so the only other things in closing that I recommend you guys to watch out for is it's called due date drift, or this is something I made up. But basically what ends up happening is, generally in a perfect world, the due date would always be, say, on the 10th. But since the months can be like anywhere from 28 to 31 days, it might be the 10th on one month, the 9th on another month, or the 11th on another month. And so keep that in mind, that it might shift a little bit. And so that's why I like to pull 3 to 4 statement periods to see what that looks like. The other thing is, if call the credit card companies and ask if they allow you to change the due date. If they don't, then plan your whole strategy around the ones that don't. I would recommend calling it on all the cards that you're considering doing it on, and then basically like slotting it out however fits your schedule. And so again, always make sure to pay your statement balances in full. Don't pay that minimum balance, meaning you can close the statement period with a balance and pay the balance in full. Meaning, using that earlier example, you pay $10,000, you charge $10,000, you pay $6,000, there's a $4,000 balance left. If your statement balance is $4,000 and then you charge an extra $2,000, you can close out that statement cycle with $2,000 still open, and you're not going to pay any interest because you paid the statement balance of $4,000. And so that's kind of why I like putting it on a spreadsheet, so that it's kind of easier to track. And so in terms of what you can do today, this is kind of the steps I'd recommend. Download your 3 statements, figure out your billing cycles, call your card issuers, and then spread your spend out across all your credit cards. And then always make sure to pay that statement balance in full. And that's it.